Well, hello again and welcome to Concert Conversations. This is a chance we get to hear a little bit about the music that we're going to share in together, the Quad City Symphony Orchestra's Masterworks series. We're grateful to Chris Connolly and Wells Fargo Advisors for the opportunity to do this. And I'm most grateful to Mark Russell Smith, the music director and conductor of the Quad City Symphony Orchestra. Maestro, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure as always.
And speaking of joining us at these December Masterworks concert, we're going to be joined by a world-renowned, globally recognized artist, Yefim Bronfman. So how long has it been in the works that we were going to get him to be with us?
Probably a year or so.
Yeah.
I mean, we plan these things, way in advance. But he became available, and the Schumann Concerto hasn't been performed here, and we was like, let's do it. And so the stars kind of aligned for us to have, like you said, absolutely a world-class, very famous soloist join us for Masterworks III.
And we're going to get into that Schumann piece here in just a moment. One of the things about this concert is that in December, the symphony does a wonderful pivot where, accommodating to a very ironclad schedule at Augustana, we get to hear you in a much more intimate setting. Those of us who will go to the Sunday performance will be at Moline High School's Bartlett Performing Arts Center. But I have really kind of developed a bit of a Jones for those, because we get to hear you and the orchestra in a much more intimate setting, and we're going to take advantage of that right out of the gate with opening with Johann Sebastian Bach's Orchestral Suite No. 3, which was kind of designed for a smaller, more intimate setting.
For sure. I mean, the halls, there were no, 2,400 seat halls in Bach's time. And, Bach is writing for very practical reasons. He was writing for a patron and who basically funded a virtuoso orchestra in Curtin, and it enabled him to really explore things and explore instrumental colors, and as opposed to later on in his career where it was music based in the church and liturgy and in that ilk. This is just a very different thing. And so we're glad that Bach had both of those jobs, because now there's the cello suites exist, and the violin, sonatas, and all this great strictly instrumental music exists because of this opportunity for him. And so the Third Orchestral Suite is like Baroque music at its best. The little piccolo trumpets, 3 trumpets and oboes and celebratory and just, it's all everything that everybody loves about Baroque music, I think.
Well, one of the things I find very, incomprehensible about Bach is the way that music ruled his life. It was his job, really. And I know you've been to Leipzig and the Thomaskirche and all these kinds of things, but to think that he was constantly cranking out music for every single worship service and festival and everything else. I think it's a miracle if I remember to take the garbage out once a week. He was writing full cantatas. And yet the quality is so consistently there. I don't understand that.
No, well, look, this is a once in a century intellect and talent. Comparing, us mere mortals to somebody like Bach is, you just shouldn't do it. You're exactly right. And there's so much music of his that has disappeared. There's a treasure trove and just, huge amounts of music that he wrote for organ, for all the cantatas. There's so many cantatas that are missing, and then all this. And so instrumentally, who knows what we don't know that is out there. But, it would take 3 lifetimes of full-time musicianship to really know all of Bach's music. And so, it's just an embarrassment of riches. And it is mind-boggling because it is the quality of, just playing the preludes and fugues, the 2 books of the Well-Tempered Clavier. That's page after page of just miraculous music, miraculously constructed, rigorous and following all the rules, yet super expressive, each one is a unique thing. They're the same thing. They're preludes and fugues, and that's the format. But within that format, there's just such an immense variety of expression, of keys, of feeling, of yeah. It's a miracle. I mean, Bach is one of those, once in a century, once in a millennia genius. I mean, there's no question about it.
Another reason I love these kinds of concerts when we get this opportunity in the Quad Cities is, will you be conducting from the harpsichord?
I will, yes.
See, yeah. That's something that I hope you'll just dwell for a moment for our viewers who may not be familiar with that. But I mean, what we conceive of as a conductor today is, in the grand sweep of things, a relatively recent development. You're thinking about Mendelssohn and some others like that. And previously, it was done the way you're going to do it. Right. At these concerts. Tell us a little bit about that, how that changes your work.
Well, I mean, it's written for smaller forces, first of all. And the composer was, there's always what's called a continuo instrument of like that keeps things going, kind of fills in. I mean, it's the analogy, of course, is like a jazz group, where there's piano, bass, and drums. Piano, bass, and drums are like the foundation, and then you throw in a saxophone, you throw in whatever on top. But there's always that foundation. Same for Baroque music. There's always a keyboard instrument and a basso continuo. So like there's a bass instrument, either a cello, a bass, a bassoon. And so that's just part of how they performed then and how the music was written. And so it's meant for the keyboard player to improvise and to fill in the chording following what's called figured bass, the bass line. It was all, no pun intended, I mean, based on the bass line and built up from there. And so at that time, ensembles were small, and there was really no need for somebody standing up waving a stick. That wasn't really a thing. So even with the Passions with bigger pieces, somebody would be leading from the organ, from the keyboard. Bach himself would be, playing and nodding his head. But because the way the music is constructed, and because of the relatively small size of the ensemble, the issues that come up later on for conductors, like how are we going to keep it together? I mean, just kind of practical things weren't really an issue. And so I love it. I'm not waving my arms much at all. I'm just sitting there playing, and I'm just one of the musicians, and that's great. And that's the atmosphere. I mean, that's the culture of Baroque music. And so I love being able to do that. You feel kind of dumb standing up there, something that kind of is motoric and kind of takes care of itself. I mean, that being said, there are, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stylistic interpretive things that we have to figure out. Yeah. So my job is really done before. My job is done marking the parts. My job is figuring out the phrasing, the nuances, of course, choosing the tempi. There are all sorts of interpretive things that I have to figure out because it's built like that, because the composer was always there. The music, the actual notes that are given to musicians are there's very little extra information. Like there's dynamics, but there's barely dynamics. And there's forte, but then there's forte for 24 bars. And so within those 24 bars, is there nuance of the forte? Of course there should be, but like he doesn't tell us crescendo, he doesn't tell us diminuendo, he doesn't tell us how to articulate. What they were writing then was very much like a sketch, it's like here. But the players knew the style, the composer was right there. And so therefore, unlike much later, like for Mahler and for contemporary composers now who like dictate everything, tell us everything, Bach and Mozart, frankly, coming up, tell us very little. And so there's much interpreting and that we have to do. And so that's really my job here with the Bach, is less arm waving than it is decision making and pre-rehearsal preparation.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to get to the Mozart next here, but I will say that just as an audience member, it's great to see you in that sort of a jazz idea of really making the music together, and it's more intimate with your eye contact and things. So it's fun to watch that. And we will get to our new to us work, the Schumann, in just a moment. But let's talk about that Mozart. One of the most familiar and best loved of his symphonies, the number 41, nicknamed the Jupiter.
Right.
And you not too long ago we heard the 40th, but this is just, I mean, it's a great experience to hear it live.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really not hyperbole. I talked about the genius of Bach. Well, the genius of Mozart, is one of the few that can rival the genius of Bach. And this piece of all pieces, brings that to the fore. I mean, the intricacy of the last movement, of the counterpoint, the fugue, I mean, just from a scientific standpoint about how that last movement is constructed, I mean, it's a miracle. And of course, it's expressive and it's joyous, and it's it's using these forms that Mozart, because of his just immense genius, was seemingly not a challenge at all, using all this to make such a incredible statement, and to have the symphony culminate in this is, only Mozart could do that. And so, yeah. I mean, that's why it's great. It's great for so many reasons. It's great. It's in a way kind of the culmination of the late classical period, where composers were concerned about form, or were very much, I wouldn't say restricted, but were very much mindful of, symphonic forms of, here a symphony is like this, sonata allegro form is like this. And Mozart followed those rules while at the same time pushing the envelope of expression, pushing the envelope of what these forms can handle. And it was just like a natural, and then came Beethoven, who would like really push the forms, and so Mozart, he was a perfecter, I'd like to say. Mozart wasn't an innovator necessarily. He took what was there and made it something perfect. Just like he did, there was a Singspiel, which is like a Broadway show, and he made the Magic Flute. And so he took that form and made it something, otherworldly. Yeah. Same. He took the symphonic form with these last three symphonies and, made just, jaw-dropping, fantastic pieces of art that are eternal. And so to revisit them is something that, every audience member should do, and every orchestra member should do. And, I think, I shouldn't say we don't do it enough, but I mean, I think I'm really intentional about making sure that we do that. I mean, we're super innovative, I think, with programming, this program a little less so. But it's about that balance, and it's making sure that we revisit the roots with pieces like the Bach, like the Mozart Jupiter Symphony.
Well, and I do love your language about that, like Mozart being a perfecter, right? But then it kind of inherently falls to those who come in that wake, that they've got to be somewhat the groundbreakers, like Beethoven, and going in new directions. And Schumann, who had it's not a very happy story in terms of his biography, but he wrote this amazing music that, had he lived 100 years earlier, who knows, right? But he was there at a time that allowed for this, the kind of expression that we will hear in this piano concerto. And as I realized, you mentioned we hadn't heard this before in the Quad Cities.
No, that's not right.
Oh, I thought you said this was our first time doing this. No. Okay. No. Scratch that. But
okay.
Anyway.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't have the.
We'll look at the program later.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is just. But
I'm pretty sure it's been played. Yeah.
Okay, but as we dive into the Schumann, for this period in music, we were heading in new directions.
We were, and I mean, like every composer, I mean, Schumann is a unique voice, because he, while being absolutely kind of the arch romantic as far as thought and as far as what he wanted music to express, he also, I mean, he loved Bach, and he was backwards looking and absolutely knew the music of Bach, which wasn't always the case. I mean, you know, really and it's something that we have to always keep in mind. I mean, the music, when Bach and the musicians of Bach's time were playing music, they were always playing new music. The only thing they were playing was new music. I mean, they never really looked back. They never, you know, they weren't saying, oh, let's play Renaissance music. Like, they were playing music of their time. Mozart's musicians, same. I mean, it was the rare composer who looked backwards. And so it was really the early romantics like Schumann who were were like opening up and welcoming the influence of Bach, like looking backwards. And like music history wasn't really a thing much until like Beethoven and later, you know. And so you get kind of the best of both worlds. And Schumann, you know, I mean, what I love about Schumann is his honesty, is like the music is just so direct, and it's so, you know, his emotions he wears on his sleeve, and it's like you just have to, it's genuine and it's heartfelt, and you can sense that, I think, and it's beautiful, and it's, yeah, I mean, he had a really complicated life, but I love conducting Schumann because, like I said, it's just honest, and you know, it's not without its problems, orchestrationally. You know, sometimes some of the things he does, like you have to work a little harder to bring stuff off, orchestral balance wise. Sometimes with the line it's hard because of double notes. I mean, there are all sorts of kind of idiosyncratic problems, but I just love his aesthetic and love just his honesty.
I mean, it's very often the case that we get to hear from great artists from outside of our community, in some part due to your relationships with them. Have you worked with Yefim Bronfman before?
I have not.
So how did we get on?
Well, I think I mean, he has friends like Emmanuel Axe and you know, I mean, people who have come to the Quad Cities who had a great experience here and who love the orchestra, and maybe I would dare say were surprised by how well the orchestra played, or were pleasantly surprised by their experience here. And so, I mean, that is, you know, it's no exaggeration to say, I mean, you know, we have a great reputation in the industry, and I mean, that's why we were able to get him.
Well, it is certainly true, and I love it when I get a chance to talk to other people that we punch way above our weight.
Right.
And other people are envious of the kind of things that our symphony brings to us. And for that, of course, we owe a great deal of gratitude to you. And so on that note, I'll just remind people that we can have this conversation in person, and hopefully you'll join us 1 hour prior to the Saturday concert in the Adler Theater, and also an hour prior to the Sunday concert, which will be at Moline High School's Bartlett Performing Arts Center. But for now, I'm just very grateful, Maestro, that you were able to take the time to be with us.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this concert very, very much.
As are we all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today.